Travel along, Catholic pilgrims, as we learn from St. Augustine, Doctor of the Church, while we read his book, Confessions. Hello, Catholic pilgrims, and welcome to our last reading from Book 6. Isn't that amazing? We are already done with 6 books. Today we will talk about Epicurus, a famous philosopher who lived from 270 BC to 341 BC. Let's hear about his beliefs by opening to page 131 and reading from Book 6, Chapter 16. Praise and honor be yours, O fountain of mercy. As my misery grew worse and worse, you came the closer to me. Though I did not know it, your hand was poised, ready to lift me from the mire and wash me clean. Nothing prevented me from plunging still deeper into the gulf of carnal pleasure, except the fear of death and your judgment to come. Through all my changing opinions, this fear never left my heart. With my friends Alypius and Nebridius, I often discussed the nature of good and evil. In my judgment, Epicurus would have won all the honors, were it not that I believed that the soul lived on after death and received the reward or punishment which it deserved. Epicurus had refused to believe this. If we were immortal, I used to say, and I could live in a perpetual state of bodily pleasure with no fear of losing it, why should we not be happy? What else could we desire? I did not realize that the very root of my misery was that I had sunk to such depths and was so blind that I could not discern the light of virtue and of beauty that is loved for its own sake. For true beauty is seen by the inner eye of the soul, not by the eye of the flesh. And I never wondered what was the source of my pleasure in discussing these topics, shameful as they were, with my friends. Nor did I ask myself why, however great my indulgence in sensual pleasure, I could not find happiness, even in the sense in which I then conceived of it, unless I had these friends. And yet I certainly loved them for their own sakes, and I felt that they loved me for my sake in return. What crooked paths I trod, what dangers threatened my soul, when it rashly hoped that by abandoning you it would find something better. Whichever way it turned, on front or back or sides, it lay on a bed that was hard, for in you alone the soul can rest. You are there to free us from the misery of error which leads us astray, to set us on your own path, and to comfort us by saying, "Run on, for I shall hold you up. I shall lead you and carry you on to the end." So I'm sure that you've heard the name Epicurus, but if you don't remember who he is, this reading might not make a ton of sense. He was an influential ancient Greek philosopher who founded Epicureanism, which was a school focused on achieving a tranquil, pain-free life through just trying to maximize simple pleasures, a friendship, and the avoidance of fear and superstition. He had a deist viewpoint. He believed there were many gods, but that those many gods did not involve themselves with humans. He also didn't believe that the soul lived on after death, so why not take advantage of pleasure and avoid pain in this life, because that's all you have is this life. He also thought that because people believed that the soul lived on after death, that they feared death because they didn't know where they were going to go. So his idea was just forget all that because the soul doesn't live on after death, so you don't need to have anxiety about it. St. Augustine thinks Epicurus would be right if the soul didn't live on after death. But Augustine believes that it does. And one of the reasons he believes this is because if we can live in this world in a perpetual state of bodily pleasure, just maximizing food, drink, sex, comfort, why then are people not completely happy in this state? What else could there be to desire? But those who do try to maximize pleasure, limit their pain, and live only for this life aren't always happy. In fact, I just saw a study the other day that showed that religious people have better mental health, better marriages, better worldviews and general optimism about the world over those that live a very secular life and just try to live only for themselves. Because the religious sees that there's something else out there. There's something greater than themselves. There's something greater than their just desires that they have for earthly pleasures. And that helps them to think about the world differently than somebody who just kind of collapses in on themselves and only looks to take care of themselves. And duh, we really all know this. Why are so many rich people who can afford all the comforts and pleasures of the world oftentimes not that happy? They often have heavy drug addictions, heavy alcohol addictions. They come from broken marriages, oftentimes one after the other. They are very isolated, and sadly, a lot of them take their lives. Now, this happens in the lives of people who aren't rich as well, but if that is what makes you happy, we should expect to see nothing but happy, joyful people, in the rich community, and that's not often the case. St. Augustine comes to realize that we desire something more, and that something more is God. As he rightly says, "For in you alone the soul can rest." That'll be it for Book 6, Catholic Pilgrims. Congratulations on finishing this one. We will start Book 7 very soon, and until then, live the faith boldly and travel well.